Welcome to Lesson 2 for Bookport Training. This is the Bookport Transfer software lesson. We'll look at all the options available and some tips and tricks on how to send files quickly and effectively using Bookport Transfer. Bookport Transfer is the software you use to send files from your PC to the Bookport. When you plug in the Bookport Transfer comes up automatically. Let's plug in Bookport now.
Edit box. File name N. Dialog. Bookport Transfer. Look in I. REISERNDA letter. DOC.
So what happened was the Bookport Transfer software came up and it went to the last folder that we had sent files from. I happen to keep most of the files that I want to send to the Bookport in a folder called Email on my C drive, and as I press the down arrow I can move through these files.
OSHA 2006 call for presentations form .doc 2 of 1606.
And I can
Type
just press down arrow.
APH standards hand TEKE12.txt.
So there's this TEK12.txt that we looked at yesterday. Now, if we see a file like this and we don't really know what's in it, we can press Alt-P to get a preview of the window.
Read only. Edit box. Preview P. Tech update from the New York Times and Washington Post. Next article. New York Times Technology Circuits for Thursday 5/12/2005. State of the art. The cell phone that does everything imaginable.
Okay, so I think you can remember that from the first lesson. We listened to part of that on the Bookport. Now, if we want to go back to the list, we can press Alt-L.
Look in I. TEKE12.txt. 4 of 1606. List view.
Okay, now if we press Tab, before we do that though, that noise that you just heard right there is a sound that Bookport Transfer makes periodically while your device is connected and while nothing is happening. So if you're sending files, you won't hear that. But the purpose of that sound is to alert you that the Bookport is still connected and to remind you that you need to disconnect it, because leaving it connected actually uses up battery power on the Bookport. So if you're not, if you're not planning on sending any files, you may want to go ahead and disconnect the device. Now, it's no big deal. It's not a giant battery drainage problem. It just wants to alert you to the fact that you are still connected and that you are having some battery drainage. Now, you'll see in a minute that we can go into the options dialog in Bookport Transfer and turn off that sound, the connect sound, any of the other progress sounds that you heard yesterday as we were sending files. Okay, let's look at the next control. We're just going to press Tab to go to the next control on the Bookport Transfer window. And as we do, as we move through this window, you'll recognize that it is very similar to the Windows Open dialog, the common dialog for opening files. In fact, it's modeled after the Open dialog. It is actually a modified Open dialog command. So many of the things you can do with the Open dialog, you can also do in the Bookport Transfer window. So we'll press Tab and we'll get to a file name.
Edit box. File name N. TEKE12.txt.
So what happens by default is that the Open dialog puts the name of the highlighted file into the edit box there. And if you want to send that file, of course, you can press Enter to go ahead and send it. You can actually type in a file name from somewhere else. I have a file, for instance, called c:/c/do.txt of phone numbers and things I need to do, just a little notes thing. And I can just type that complete file name and it'll send it directly to the Bookport. Let's try that just to let you observe.
Cancel. Button. Dialog. Dialog.
Okay, so there were your progress tones and your little brunk at the end to let you know that it actually went over there. And it did. We can look on the book port now. I'll press Alt F to get to the book port file list.
Files F. Leo11.txt.
And I'll press down arrow.
Twain. M. Twain. M. Twain.
Or up
Twain.
arrow.
M. Twain. Leo11. 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 Twain. 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 Notes folder. 14. Memo folder. Do.txt.
And there it is.
12. Of 14.
And we can get properties on it from here and so forth, but we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So I'm going to press Alt-N to get back to the name.
Edit box. File name N. ccdo.txt.
Now you notice that the screen reader said file name N. And that N indicates that that's the hotkey to get to this. And this is nothing special about Bookport Transfer. This is common Windows shortcut keys within a dialog. And again, as I mentioned in the previous lesson, if you don't know these kind of things, you may be interested in looking at the verbal view of Windows XP tutorial that APH offers. It comes in a digital talking book format, a Braille file, a Word file, text, HTML. So there's plenty of formats for you to look at it on. Now, one of the other things we can do from the name dialog is switch to a different folder. So we can type in the name of another folder and press enter, and then our list box contains the names of the files that are in that folder. And of course you can browse just as easily, but sometimes it's quicker if you know the name of a folder. So just to demonstrate, I'll type C:\down. This is my downloads folder. Press enter. And then I can press Shift Tab or Alt L to get back to the list.
Look in I. Blind Justice April 19.
And as I press down arrow.
Blind Justice April 12. Blind Justice.
Now, as you noticed, when you hear audio files, the preview window contains the audio of that file, and I pressed Escape to stop it. So I'll press down arrow again.
Bookport Lessons.doc. 3.
And another down arrow.
Blind Justice March. Blind.
And I pressed Escape.
Xun 24K0. 5.
This is a CSUN.
Xun 24.
This is a CSUN presentation that was recorded by one of our Bookport users. I'll keep pressing down arrow.
Search engine.txt. 2005 Kernel Manual 2. 1. 1014 GBU 300 P17 1. Getting started 1.txt. RAID 9200 and 25. ATI Advanced. Samsung A400s. Phone.txt. RHLG. Book Career User Guide.
So that's just a list of the files that are in this folder, and I primarily just wanted to demonstrate to you that you can switch folders that way. Now, of course, you can still, while you're in this list box, you can still do it all the other Windows ways as well. You can press the backspace key and you'll back out a level.
Look in I. MT.txt.
So now we're looking at the root of drive C.
X.txt. Millimeters.txt. McDonald.txt. Print.txt. ttdesk.txt. Into.txt. Interview.txt. Poutline.txt. Server.txt.
And then, of course, if I hit end, I'll go to the end of the list, and that's where all the folders are
Cabs.
listed.
IE60.
I'm going up arrow now.
Samples. Setup. RPC. Printer drive. Lexmark. Downloads. JFW. Recycler. Versus. Wink. Player.
Okay, so I'll press home to get back to the top file.
MT.txt.
And,
1.
And incidentally, again, you'll know this already, but you can type a D. If I want to get back to the down folder, I can type a D and it'll take me to the first file that starts with a D.
Docs.txt.
Or I can type quickly, I can type DOWN and it'll take me straight to
Down.
the down
60.
folder. And to open that, I merely press
Look
Enter.
in eye. Look in
And now I'm back to
blind justice. Type M.
the same folder that I was in a minute ago. And again, that's just common Windows commands, nothing special about that. Let's go ahead and press Tab. We'll go back to the name edit
box. File name.
Well, if we press Tab again, just as in any open dialog, we'll get back to the files of type combo box.
Files of type T. Bookport files.txt, .doc, .brl, .brf, .mp.
So by default, the list that you're examining shows you all the file types that the Bookport supports. Now, often it's very useful to limit the kinds of files that you're looking for, especially if there's a lot of files in a folder, and you're just specifically looking for Word files or Braille files or what have you. In fact, let's just show you that. We can press down
Text
arrow.
files.
And there, that shows us text files.
Microsoft Word files. Doc.
Microsoft
3
Word files.
of 10. Braille files. .brf, .br.
So let's just look for Braille files.
Look in eye. 14,625 V0, 1.brf. 2 of 133.
So we see that we've got 133 Braille files in this folder that we're looking at. Now this is a perfect example of a very cryptic file name. So let's press the Alt-P to get to the preview window and see what's really in this
Read
file.
only. Edit box. Preview P. Abraham Lincoln. By Thomas Keneally.
So what happened is Bookport Transfer actually reverse translated the name of, the contents of that file. So we had this cryptic name that we had no idea what that was, but now we know this is Abraham Lincoln. So let's go back to the name field.
Edit box. File name N. 14,625 V0, 1.brf.
Okay. And by the way, you can move further on down too if you want to see more of the file. So let's hit Alt-P.
Read only.
We can press down
Abraham.
arrow.
By Thomas Keneally. Volume I of 2 volumes. Page. Published by the Penguin Group. Penguin.
Okay, so we can actually look through the contents of this file just by pressing the down arrow and seeing more of it. We'll go back to Alt-N for name.
Edit box.
And back to we'll press Tab once to get back to the files of type.
Files of type T.
And
Braille.
actually, I could have hit Alt-T to get back to that. I just couldn't remember what it was. Well, let's just go through the rest of the list to show you the other kinds of files that Bookport Transfer and Bookport supports.
Braille files.brf.
So
.b.
there's the Braille files.
Rich text. HTML files.htm. .html. 5.
So HTML files and HTML.
Rich text files.rtf. 6. Of 10.
RTF, that's kind of a text file with formatting in it.
Audio files.mp3. .mp2. .mpg. .wav.
So
7.
If you just wanted to see the audio files, you could point it here and then go back to your list, and you would only see audio files.
Digital talking books.op. 8. Of 10.
So OPF files are digital talking books. And if you're looking just for digital talking book files and you don't want to see the associated files with them, you can go to there.
Audible.com files.op. 9. Of 10.
So audible.com files or .aa. If we just want to see the Audible files, we can do that.
All files. 10. Of 10.
And then all files shows you everything, including things that the Bookport does not support. So let's just set this back to its default.
Bookport files.txt.
And I did that by pressing the Home key. Let's press Tab again.
Send S.
And we'll see the next control is a Send button. Now you don't really need to use the Send button, and its shortcut was S, of course, so you can point to a file and press the send button, or you can just hit enter. Now I should also point out that while the send button is necessary for sighted people, again, you don't really need that. You just move your arrow keys to the file you want to send and press enter, and it's gone. Let's press tab again.
Favorites are see email 1 of 21 combo box.
So we're in our favorites combo box, and its hotkey is Alt-R because it said favorites R. This combo box shows us all the places from which we have sent files in the recent past. So it's an easy way to get back to some of your favorite places. It also has one additional purpose. It contains the files or the folder where your audible.com subscriptions get downloaded to. So Bookport Transfer looks in your audible.com program and finds where its library is located, and then adds that folder to your favorites list. So if you want to look at the files that you have received from audible.com, you can do that. And we'll talk more about audible.com in a separate lesson. The short of it is that audible.com is a web service, a subscription service that contains commercial audio books that you can download. It costs anywhere from $10, $20, sometimes even more per book, but it's a great site, and there's lots and lots of material there. So we'll save the discussion of going to the audible.com folder for a later time, but just for you to note that that's usually the first thing that's in your favorites list. So if we press down arrow,
See program files, Audible programs, downloads.
there's our audible.com downloads. Now if we press tab again,
Read only. Edit box. Preview P.
we're back to the preview window. So we'll press tab again. We've already discussed the preview window.
Edit box. Bookport folder D.
Now the Bookport folder you can get to with Alt D. This is what we're showing you here is the list of files that are on your Bookport, and this is the default folder. So if you wanted to go, say if you had a folder, your notes folder or your memo, you could type \memo here and then press tab, and you would be looking at the files in your memos folder. Before we do that though, let's press tab one more time. We'll look at the files that are on the Bookport.
Files F. Do.txt.
So there's
12 of 14.
do.txt. Now, there's several things we can do from the files list that is on the Bookport. One of the things we can do is to press the applications key or right-click.
Context menu.
We'll get the context menu and press down arrow.
Delete D.
We can delete that file, or you can also just press the delete key without going into the context menu.
Do folder N.
New folder in. So if we want to create a new folder on the Bookport, this is one way to do it. If we press enter,
Menu closed. Edit box. Name. Dialog. New Bookport folder.
so let's, it offers us a default name, but let's call this Demo Bookport folder, and we press enter.
Files F. Demo Bookport folder. 15 of 15.
Now,
Multi-selection.
so we have it automatically highlights the new folder. So if you want to open it, you can just press enter on it.
Folder is empty. 1 of 1.
And it,
No selected.
of course, there's nothing in this folder yet now. But this points out, now if we send a file to the Bookport, it goes into this folder because this is the folder that we're pointing at. So let's go back to the list, the list of files on the PC with Alt-L.
Look in I. The Devileth White City and Abridged Part 1 MP 332 large.
Okay, we're in our Audible folder. So let's go back to Alt-R,
Favorites are
and we'll go up to email,
C email. 1.
and then Alt-L.
Look in I. Usha 20, APH Standards Hand, TEKE, Leo, RB Man. Bookport 0, 1, Bookport, APHPD8, Leo 0, 4.tx.
Okay, there's Leo04. Let's send that one.
Cancel. Button. Dialog.
Okay, so now we can go back to Alt-F to look on the book port itself.
Files F. Leo 0, 4.txt.
And there it is
1.
over there.
Of 1. No selected item.
So that's the only
Multi-
file in this folder.
Leo.
Let's press Applications key again to see what some of the other options are.
Context. Delete D. Do folder N. Properties P.
We can look at the properties, and this will show us
Menu closed.
many things.
Files
about
F.
this.
Locked L. Checkbox. Unchecked. Dialog. Leo 0, 4.txt properties.
So I'm gonna go ahead and read the whole screen.
Leo 0, 4.txt properties. Title. Leo, the Louisville Eccentric Observer Alternative. Size. 231.7 KB. Created. Tuesday, May 17, 2005, 3:02 p.m. Modified. Tuesday, May 17, 2005, 3:02 p.m. Locked. Checkbox. Unchecked. Synchronized. Checkbox. Unchecked. Disabled. Default. OK. Button. Cancel. Button.
Okay, so there's several pieces of information in this properties dialog, and one of them you noticed was the title of the book or the file, and Bookport uses that title as the file name as you navigate on the Bookport. It's usually a much more descriptive name than the name of the file. And there is a way that you can change it so that Bookport uses the file name as the title, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But there are also a couple of other controls on this dialog that we need to discuss. One of them is locked, so we can lock this file to prevent accidental deletion, because you can delete files from the Bookport. We haven't discussed how to do that yet. Just for your information, it's by pressing the B and the E keys together. You have to do that twice. Or you can do it from this dialog, from Bookport Transfer itself. So let's go through the other controls
OK.
here.
Locked L. Checkbox. Unchecked.
So it's not locked by default. You also saw that there was another button that's currently disabled, and that's the Synchronize button. We'll talk more about that when we get into the notes features of the Bookport. So the other files, of course, are just OK and cancel, and we'll just press Escape instead of tabbing to cancel or OK.
Files F. Leo 0.
And again, to delete this, we can just press the Delete key.
Folder is empty.
And now
1.
it's empty.
Of 1.
Let's finish up looking at the items in the context menu.
Contact. Delete. Do folder N.
New folder.
Properties P. Disable.
Properties.
Refresh R.
Refresh. This will let you refresh the view of what's in that box in case somebody put a file in there behind your back.
Retrieve T. Disabled.
Now, the retrieve item is disabled, well, for two reasons. One, we're not really pointing to a file, and the second, we're not in the notes folder. If you were in the notes folder, this allows you to take that file back to your PC, and we will talk about that in a later lesson.
Mark as synchronized as disabled.
And that one and this one
Mark as not synchronized Y disabled.
are both also related to notes. And I believe that was the
Delete
last one.
D.
Yeah, we're back to delete. So we'll press Escape to exit the context
Menu closed.
And we're back to this folder that's empty.
Folder is empty.
We can
1. Of 1.
we
No
can,
selected item.
We can go back to the parent folder by pressing the backspace key. Again, just a standard Windows command.
Leo11.txt.
That takes us to the first file on the regular list of bookport items. Oh, I meant to show you. Let me go back to the end.
Demo bookport folder.
I press the end key and I'm going to press enter to open that folder.
Folder is empty.
Folder is empty. Now if I go back to the file, to the folder control that was immediately preceding this one, I'll press Shift Tab.
Edit box. Bookport folder D. Demo bookport folder.
So there's actually a backslash in front of that. I don't have my punctuation on, but I'll press Home and
D backslash D E M O space B O O K P O R T space N O L D E R.
Okay. So I can press Tab to get back
Files
to the
F.
folder. Now, if you're several levels deep, what you can do is press the Shift Tab.
Edit box.
And I can just type a backslash and then Tab.
Files F. Leo11.
And that puts us, you know, that's just giving us a way to type any folder name that's on the book port. And of course, if I go back to it, it'll be backslash now.
Edit box.
And so
backslash.
So I'll.
Files F.
Let's see. I think that about covers it. Of course, you got your standard Windows control. End
Demo.
goes to the last one. Home goes to the first
Leo
one.
11.
If you want to go to one with a specific name, I can type T.
Twain M.
And it goes
The
to
Prince and the
Twain.
Pauper.
I can press another T and it goes to the next
Twain
one.
M. The Bridge Builders.txt. 3 of 15.
All right, so I think that's about everything we need to know about the bookport folder control on bookport transfer. Again, that just shows us the files that are on bookport itself. We'll press Tab to go to the next control on the bookport transfer dialog.
Options. O. Dialog.
And this is our options dialog. There's a lot of important options in here, so let's just go through them very quickly. We'll press space to open the options dialog.
Send text as line-oriented L. Checkbox. Checked. Property sheet. Dialog.
Okay. The first button is a button called Send Text as Line Oriented. By default, that will be unchecked. I'd prefer to leave mine checked because I send a lot of files that aren't necessarily literarily oriented. So what this does is treats the natural carriage return line feed occurrences in a file as the navigation points that you use with your next line and previous line or next sentence and previous sentence commands on the bookport itself. So if this checkbox were set to not send text files as line oriented, then you would your 1 and your 3 keys would move you by sentences through the file. And that's a good way to do it if you read a lot of literary material. Like most of the books that I send here in these 2 lessons have been literary books, and it probably would have been better to send them as line-oriented. Makes a lot more sense, a lot easier to navigate. But you can change that to however you want to do it. The next button.
Send audio files as music M. Checkbox. Unchecked.
Okay, send audio files as music. If you are sending music files, you'll want to check that for several reasons. But if you're not sending audio files as music, in other words, you have some podcast files that you want to send over, or some other kinds of files that are not necessarily music, you can perform a lot of pre-processing on those files to make them a lot more useful in the bookport. And what I mean by that is actually compressing the time and squeezing pauses from the files. I know every time I talk about pause removal, I have to cover up my little doggy's ears because he gets kind of nervous, but I keep trying to tell him we're just talking about pauses in audio files. But anyway, If you want to send files as music, you go ahead and check that box, and well, we'll just show you how that works. We'll check it.
Checked.
And these settings do get remembered. So I'll press Enter to close this dialog.
Options.
And I'll press Alt-N to switch to the file name edit control.
Edit box.
And I'll type, I've got some files in C:\MP3, and I'll press Shift-Tab.
Look in I.
And we'll look through some of my files here that I may want to send. Actually, I'm going to go to the end where the folders are.
The 50th Anniversary Collection Disc 1.
Okay, here's some Jim Croce.
Look in I. 2. 3 box 10.mp3.
That's a great
2.
file.
Cancel.
Go ahead and send it.
Button.
Box 10.
Dialog.
Box
Sending
number
1 of
10.
1. 2. 3 box 10.mp3. Default. Cancel. Button. Look in I.
Okay, that file is over there. If I want to verify that, I can hit Alt-F to look at the bookport
Files F. Leo 11.
And I'll hit End to go to the end of the list.
Demo bookport folder.
Now, I need to go up past the folders, though, so I'll hit up arrow a
Notes
couple times.
memo 2. 3 box 10.mp3.
And,
13.
of course, we can look at the properties of this file.
Locked L. Checkbox. 2. 3 box 10.mp3 properties. Title. 2. 3 box 10.mp3. Size. 2.8 MB. Created. Tuesday, May 17, 2005, 3:12 p.m. Modified. Tuesday, May 17, 2005, 3:12 p.m. Locked.
Okay, we'll press Escape to cancel that.
Fine.
Let me just show you also what's in the preview window textually when you have an audio file. It shows you, the software shows you the ID3 tags.
Read only. Edit box. Preview P. Previewing CMP3 the 50th Anniversary Collection Disc 1, 2, 3 box 10.mp3. Time 0, 0, 2:27.
And then we can press down.
Time
arrow.
0, 0.
I guess that's all that was.
Previewing times.
Okay, I was thinking there were more, and it just depends on what's in your ID3 tag. So that's what send audio files as music is for. So we'll hit Alt-O to get back to the options dialog. And
Send audio files as music.
I'm going to uncheck this again because I want to show you some other options.
Unchecked.
Now, if we press Tab again, well, let me recheck this and show you that there's some disabled items when the music option is checked.
Checked.
So if we press Tab now,
Send file name as title N. Checkbox. Unchecked.
so that's send file name as title. That's the option I was telling you about a moment ago, where you can have it send the name of the file as what shows up on the book port instead of the first line in the file. So I'm going to press Shift Tab to get back to the music.
Send audio.
I'll uncheck it.
Uncheck.
Now if I press Tab,
Audio options.
we
A.
have
Dialogue. Button.
another button available here called Audio Options. We'll press space to open that.
Time compression. Compress time T. Checkbox. Checked. Dialogue. Advanced audio options.
Okay, compress time. And we have that checked. And the next control will let us specify how much time we want to compress.
Edit box. Speed 1.1, 3.0, 1.5.
So I've got this compressing 1.5 times its normal rate. And I'll show you an example of how that works in just a second. If we press Tab again,
Pause compression. Compress pauses P. Checkbox. Checked.
so this removes the pauses from the audio material. And another tab.
Edit box. Compress by 100% C. 75.
I believe the default here is 50, but I like to get a little more aggressive with my pause removal. Sorry about that, Jake. Another tab.
Edit box. Ignore pauses less than MSI. 100.
So this says ignore pauses that are less than 100 milliseconds. That 75%, by the way, was remove 75% of the existing pause. Okay, so let's go to
Okay.
OK.
Audio.
And we'll get out of this dialog, and I just want to show you how this pause compression, the time compression works with audio files that are not music.
Read.
So I'm going to go ahead and press Alt-R to get to my favorites folder, and we'll switch to the Audible.
Favorites are. See email. See program files. Audible programs download.
I'll press Alt-L to get to the list.
Cancel. Buttons. Dialog.
Let me cancel
Look
that.
in eye. Look in eye.
Let's go back
Favorites
to
are.
favorites,
CM.
and we'll press Enter.
Look in eye.
And then Alt-L.
2, 3 box. 2,
Well,
3.
I'm not doing very well here. Alt-R.
Favorites are. See email. See program files. Audible pro.
There we
Look in
go.
eye.
Now Alt-L. Okay, now when I go to an Audible file,
The Devil
This
at White
is
City.
Audible.
Books on Tape presents
The Devil at
I'm going to stop that. I'll go to the preview window.
Read.
Now, when you're in the preview window with an audio file, you can press F7 to restart playing that file, and you can actually use the F3 key to increase the speed, which is those controls that we were just looking at. So you can kind of see how it sounds before you send it to the book port. And the reason you want to do that is currently the book port does not have a way to speed up and slow down audio on its own, so you have to do it before you send it to the book port. The device, of course, does have the ability to speed up and slow down the text-to-speech as we saw in the first lesson, but what we're talking about here is digital audio. So I'm going to go ahead and press F7, and then I'll press F3 a few times to speed it up, and then we can, just to tell you what the controls are, we can press Shift F3 to slow it back down and Control F3 to bring it back to normal. So I'll press F7.
This is Audible.
Books on Tape presents Devil in the White City by Eric Larson.
Okay, I need to go check. The reason I couldn't speed it up is instead of pressing OK, when I unchecked the music box, I pressed Escape, so it didn't actually change that setting. So I'm going to go back to Options.
Send text. Send audio files as music M. Checkbox. Checked.
I'll uncheck it,
Unchecked.
and I'll press Enter.
Dialog.
Now I'll go to the preview window and press F7.
This is Audible.
Books on Tape presents Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. Read by Scott Brick. Monstrosity. Olmsted's teeth hurt. His ears roared and he could not sleep.
So I went as fast as it would go. It beeped when I got to the fastest speed. So now I'll press F7 again, and we'll slow it down with Shift F3.
This is Audible.
Books on Tape presents Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. Read by Scott Brick. Monstrosity. Olmsted's teeth hurt. His ears roared and he could not sleep. Yet throughout the first months of 1892, he kept up a pace that would have been punishing for a man 1/3 his age.
So we'll speed it up
He
a little.
traveled to Chicago, Asheville, Knoxville, Louisville, and Rochester, each overnight leg compounding his distress.
Back to normal.
In Chicago, despite the tireless efforts of his young
And we'll stop it with Escape. So this is actually, when we get into Audible a little more, we'll go back over this and show you how to download things from the audible.com site. But this is actually the only way in existence to read audible.com content at other than its recorded speed. Okay, let's continue with the options dialog.
Send property. Send audio. Send file name as title N. Checkbox. Unchecked.
We discussed that already.
Prompt when deleting from the book port D. Checkbox. Unchecked.
I believe that is probably, yes, it is. It's checked by default. So a while ago when I showed you how to delete a file that was on your book port from the book port transfer software, normally a message will come up and say, are you sure you want to delete that file? But if we uncheck this box, we don't have to be annoyed by that message. But you may prefer to be annoyed by that message because maybe that annoyance will keep you from accidentally deleting a file. The next control.
Use sounds O. Checkbox. Checked.
Okay, this is the use sounds button. It's checked. If we uncheck that, we won't get that annoying
Unchecked.
connected message or connected sound to remind us that our batteries are being used up while we're connected. I'll go ahead and leave that checked, though. I like the feedback and the other sounds that come
Checked.
with it. So let's press Tab.
Note synchronization. Send retrieve notes as synchronized Y.
Okay, we're going to skip these next three buttons for a later discussion about note synchronization and taking notes on the book port. We'll skip
Note
that.
synchronization. Synchronize notes when connecting C.
And we'll
check.
skip that for now.
Synchronize now S.
And that
but-
one.
Okay,
Okay.
but cancel.
Cancel. Next time we're going to we're going to hit Tab again, and we get to our tab control list, our different tabs in the dialog.
General. 1 of 3. Tab control.
So there's the general. That's where we first started out. Then there's 3 of them. The next one
Sections.
is
2.
sections. We're going to talk about that later as well, but basically what it is, this is a place where you can treat certain patterns of characters in files as a way to separate individual articles within a file. So if you get a compilation of a magazine or an article or whatever, or several articles, and say they're separated with asterisks, you can add a line of asterisks or a few asterisks as one of the section separators here, and then that allows you to use the next section commands on the book port to skip from article to article. Let's go ahead and go to the Advanced tab.
Advanced. 3.
What I did was press right arrow. I'm going to press Tab now.
Allow auto preview A. Checkbox. Checked.
Okay, allow auto preview. As we moved from file to file, the sounds were played on audio files, and I'm going to turn that off
Unchecked.
because you can always hear what's in the file by pressing Alt-P to get to the preview window. And sometimes that kind of steps on the announcement of the file through your speech synthesizer, so you're not always sure what it is. It just depends on your preferences, which is why it's in this dialog. We'll press Tab again.
Warn when queuing files W. Checkbox. Checked.
Okay, warn when queuing files. This applies to the times when you send files to the book port and the book port is not connected. If this dialog is checked, you'll get a message box that just lets you know that these files are being put into the queue so that the next time you connect your book port, they'll be sent. And we'll talk more about that in a later lesson.
Check for updates at Startup C. Checkbox. Unchecked.
By default, this checkbox is checked. And what this says is that each time you connect your book port and you are on the internet, the software will go out to the APH web server and compare the version number of the firmware that's on your book port with the version number of the newest firmware that we have available. And if there is a newer version on the web server, a dialog will come up and let you know that there's a newer version and allow you to download it if you wish, to download and install it, in fact. And you can also read about the details of the new version before you install it. I've unchecked that because I usually know when there's updates coming. You may want to do that too because well, truthfully, it takes up a second or two as you connect your book port, and you can probably just as effectively remind yourself to check once a week or once a month or whatever. And those controls are a little bit further down in this advanced tab of the options dialog that we will show you in just a second. So we'll go to the next control.
Send DTBS at start chat B. Checkbox. Unchecked.
Okay, send DTBs at startup. DTBs are digital talking books. By default, that button is also checked, and what that means is that when you connect your book port, if you have a digital talking book in one of your CDs, the dialog will pop up automatically to allow you to send that book or part of that book directly to the book port. Again, I just prefer to do that manually because if you have the book port connected and you insert a CD with a DTB, a digital talking book, the dialog will come up anyway. So that's just a matter of preference. The next control.
Edit box. Default book port folder D.
So the default book port folder, and I believe there's a backslash in here.
Backslash.
Yes. I don't have my punctuation on the screen reader, is why we didn't hear that. It's a good idea to not put everything that you send to the book port in the root folder. So if you have a lot of technical manuals or maybe some fiction, or maybe just a default folder, some other folder, you can type the name of that folder here, and every time you send a file, unless you tell it otherwise, the file will go into that folder on the book port. And I'll just demonstrate how that works.
Backslash.
Let's say we want to send all our files to a folder called fiction. So we'll type \fiction. And we'll go ahead and press enter, and we'll come back to this dialog in a minute.
Read only. Edit box.
We'll go to our file list. And by the way, this book port transfer software will automatically create that folder if it doesn't exist when you send a file. So let's go to our list of
Look
files. And actually, we don't want in the Audible files. Let's go back
Edit.
to the email.
Look in I. Usha 20 APTEK Leo 11
Let's go down and find a new
TE
file that we haven't sent
BFE
yet.
0 telephone.txt TALKS 61.ht Leo 27.t.
Okay, I've got a lot of Leo magazines on here. I probably need to delete some. We'll go ahead and send that over.
Cancel button. Dialog.
Now we'll press Alt-F to go to the book port folder.
Files F. Leo 27.txt. 1
And
Leo 27.txt.
if we press Shift-Tab, we'll see that we're in
Edit box. Book port folder D. Fiction.
we're in the fiction folder. Now, of course, we'll press Tab to get back to the book port
Files
folder,
F.
and we can press backspace to get back to the root.
Leo 11.txt.
And we'll press N to get to the last file or folder on the list.
Fiction folder.
So it created that folder for us called Fiction. Now, you'll see as we press up arrow, you'll recognize the other folders that we have on our book port.
Demo book port folder.
There's the one we created a minute ago.
Notes folder.
The Notes
14.
folder. I think I mentioned already that automatically gets created when you connect your book port. And that's a place to store notes. And we'll talk again about the very cool note-taking features of this device in a later lesson.
Memo folder.
And there's your memo folder. That's got the memos that you record on the device itself. All right, let's go back to the options dialog and back to
Allow
advanced.
auto preview A. Send DT. Edit box. Software.
Okay,
Edit box.
we were right here.
Default book port folder D.
So the next item is the check for updates.
Software. S. Dialog.
So
Button.
if you want to check for a new version of the software, you can just press spacebar. It'll go out to the internet.
Cancel. Button. Dialog. Book port transfer. No update is available at this time. Default. Okay.
All right.
Button.
So I'm using the newest version. I'll press enter.
Software.
Same way with firmware.
Firmware. F.
We can press.
Dialog. Bookport firmware. No update is available at this time. Default.
Now, if there were an update, it would show you here and allow you to download it and install it.
Property.
Let's press another tab.
Activate.
Okay, this is our audible.com activation. We'll save a detailed discussion about activate and deactivate for a later lesson when we focus more on audible.com.
Deactivate.
That's the deactivate button. I will mention here that audible.com content is protected so that you have to activate your bookport to be able to read audible.com files on it. And once you put those files onto your bookport, you can't take that card and put it in somebody else's bookport and read your Audible files with it. They have to actually, they're tied to your specific bookport. Okay, let's press another tab.
Fix file system errors. Y. Button.
Fix file system errors is a button that really should not have to be in here, but as a flash card works very much like a disk, there's the possibility that errors can occur on it. This can happen if your bookport crashes, or if you pull the card out while it's reading, or if you pull the card out before you get the double beep shutdown sound. There's a possibility that you could have errors, and this button allows you to fix any errors. So this is the first place you'll want to stop if you kind of get any kind of squirrely behavior on your bookport. This would be the first thing that you'll want to check. If we press that button, it doesn't hurt to press it even if there are no errors.
OK. Button. Bookport transfer. File system repair complete. Default. OK.
Now, the unfortunate thing about this is it doesn't tell you whether it actually found anything or fixed anything. It just tells you that the fixing is complete. Let me close that dialog. Also, one thing that you may want to be aware of is that you must have administrative privileges on the PC that you use this command with. Fixing file system errors is not something that your average user can use because it could potentially be destructive. So if you have administrative rights on your PC, there's no problem. If you don't, you probably need to contact the administrator of your PC. And if you're just using this on your own home system, chances are you do have administrative privileges. All right, let's continue.
DLL info. I.
Okay, the DLL info, a DLL is a dynamic link library, and as with any kind of fairly complex software, there are many DLLs associated with bookport transfer, and this provides version information and copyright information for all the DLLs associated with the bookport transfer software. And really the only time that this may be useful is if you have to call APH for technical support. The technician may have you look in this DLL info area to examine the versions of the files that you have on your system.
OK.
And then back to the OK button.
Dialog.
So we'll cancel that. Now let's continue on. We stopped in the main dialog to go through the options, and there's just one or two more buttons here that I'd like to show you about.
Options. Help. H.
Okay, the help shows you the bookport manual, and you've already got the manual on your device, but if you want to read it on your computer, you can press this button.
Top. Bookport and bookport transfer. User's manual.
So let's press tab. This is actually an
Copyright American
HTML file.
Heading 1. Table of contents.
And there's a table of contents here with all the sections of the manual in it, so you can just tab through them.
Overview. Advanced software. How it works. Flexible NAT. Simple connection to PC. Removable media. Power. Visited link.
So if we want to go to power, we can just go there and press enter.
PowerBook Port is powered with 2Ah batteries that are user replaceable. It runs for well over 60 hours with electronic text on a set of batteries. Digital audio demands a little more from the power supply, but the unit's power consumption is remarkably conservative even on the most demanding content.
Okay. So when you're through with the help, of course, you can just go through and read all you want. And we do highly recommend that you read the manual. There's a lot of good information in there. These tutorials are really just a way to get you a quick start and maybe to give you a little insight and a fast track to getting going. The fast track to getting going with your book port. I'll press Alt F4 to close this.
Help.
And we're back
H.
to the help button. And then the final control in the bookport transfer dialog
About.
is about.
A.
This shows you the information about version numbers.
Okay. Button. Dialog. About bookport transfer. Bookport transfer version 2.0.1.0. Copyright C2 0022005 American Printing House for the Blind, Incorporated. Book Wizard Reader version 1.0.8.0. Copyright C2 0012005 American Printing House for the Blind, Incorporated. Calmrec Audio Engine version 6.4.0.2. Copy.
So, most of the components, if not all the components, are listed here. But what I'd really like to point out is that your version number and serial number for your book port are also in this dialog. That is, if you have your book port connected when you go into this.
Pointer rooted to
So
button.
let's go
Default.
down here.
Bookport firmware version 2.0.0.0.
And then I believe the serial number
Default.
also.
Okay. Bookport serial number 1,010,001,799.
So those are two pieces of information that you can actually get on the book port, but if you don't understand them, you can use your screen review program to look at them in detail with this about dialog. So I'll press enter to cancel
About.
that. And
Close.
there's
Button.
close button. You really, the close is like the send. It's really there, well, not even for sighted people, because the real way to close bookport transfer is to unplug your bookport like this. And we're back to being unconnected from the computer. So now let's look through our file system on the bookport.
The Prince and the Pauper. The Bridge Builders. Ours is Tale.
I'm pressing the pound key to move from file to
The
file.
Man That Corrupted and Lieber. Extract from Captain Stormfield's Visit to Heaven. Master and Man. The Chicknexoismus and its First Settlers. Resurrection. Bookport User's Manual. Tech update from the New York Times and Washington Post. Brad Hodges. Memo folder.
Now, that Brad Hodges, that's actually my do file that I had a while ago. And this is an example of a time when perhaps the first line of the file is not really the best thing to use on the book port. Although what I probably should start doing is putting a line at the beginning of my to-do file that just says what it is, to-do list. And, of course, I didn't do that, so I got Brad Hodges is the name of that file, which is, again, the first item in that file. I'll keep going.
Notes folder.
The notes folder,
Demo bookport folder.
demo bookport folder,
Fiction folder.
fiction folder,
Last folder. Fiction folder.
last folder. Okay, so remember, we can open that folder with the 2,
File. Fiction /Leo. The Louisville Eccentric Observer Alternative Weekly Newspaper.
and we can move through the files just like we do with any time with the star and the pound.
Last file. Leo, the Louisville Eccentric Observer Alternative Weekly
So
Newspaper.
there's only one file in this folder.
First file. Leo, the Louisville Eccentric Observer Alternative Weekly Newspaper.
Now, I don't really need that file, so I'll show you how the delete command works while we're here. We press the B and the E together,
Press again to delete Leo, the Louisville Eccentric Observer Alternative Weekly Newspaper.
and we do it.
Leo, the Louisville Eccentric Observer Alternative Weekly Newspaper. Deleted. There are no files to read.
So there are no files left in this folder. So we'll back out of the folder with star and 0,
Fiction folder.
and we're back to the list of files that are on the main folder, the root folder of the device. Okay, that concludes Lesson 2. Thank you for joining us.